And final question to yourself, Nick, and Bruno, you can also chip in. This one is regarding a deceased estate. In the case of a deceased estate, do we have to wait for the final appointment of the executor, or can the rent that's due be paid to the next of kin or closest relationship? Gentlemen?
Okay, so let me touch on this quickly. The long and the short of it is you are going to have to wait for the appointment of the executor in the estate. Okay, so when we have someone who passes away, an executor is appointed to their estate, provided that their estate is of a certain value, in order to manage and basically facilitate the estate so that it passes on in accordance with the will or otherwise intestate in our law. Okay, and the person that's got the authority to do that is the executor. Okay, the only other person might be someone that they can appoint, but that has to be a power that is specifically given to that executor to get people to assist them in a will. All right, so the executor is the one that can direct, and their job is to make sure that they get all of these assets, okay, in this case rental or whatever the case is, and they get it together, and they have to report to the master what they have collected, what the value of the estate is, and how it's going to be distributed. These are important things that have to happen, and the executor is the one that can do it. So the long and the short answer is yes. You got to wait for the final appointment. No one's got the authority at that point to start directing that money gets paid to different people and to different accounts. The executor's got to do that after they've reported to the master. That being said, we must remember that we live, obviously in South Africa, and we have the Master of the High Court, and the Master of the High Court is infamous for being, how do we say this nicely, Bruno, a little bit lackadaisical with their duties. I don't think I'm unfair in saying that.
No,
They've reported it themselves that they've dropped the ball a few times. So there needs to be some practicality when it comes to these things, because sometimes the master does unfortunately take a bit long to actually get moving with their duties and appoint the executors, give the requisite authorities in order to do that. So what I normally suggest my clients is, look, we're never going to suggest that you decide that rental must be paid into someone else's name. There is a massive risk that whoever that money gets paid to then disappears with the money, and they may not necessarily be the person in terms of a will that is supposed to get that money. And then you've got problems, because now the executor actually has to sue in the estate to try and get the money back. And now you're just spending money on trying to facilitate this estate. And this is where what happens is people's, the money that they're going to get from their parents, their inheritances, disappear in legal costs. So certainly don't decide that you're going to pay someone else money at all. But what you should do in the interim is be quite practical about it. You want to make sure that if there is a deceased estate, you're aware of a tenant that's in occupation of this property. Make sure they're still getting their rental invoices. Make sure they're still paying. Okay. Don't try to change accounts. Make sure they're paying into the same account so that the money just accumulates there until such time as the executor can take control and actually do something with that money and make an authorized decision. Although you have to do some sort of waiting, it's very sad to see when people are not practical about these things, and you're in just as much trouble if you pay the money over to someone who doesn't need the money as if you leave the tenant to stay in occupation of the premises and let them not pay rent for 8 months. Because in either event, you're going to now have to start pursuing the money wherever it's gone. So although you can't just make any decisions, the law doesn't work that way. I do encourage clients to be practical and make sure that anything that's running in the interim continues to run. Make sure the tenants are still paying into that account, and that account is being topped up the whole time, so that when the executor is finally appointed, it's a quick, easy, and you don't get caught up in these interlocutory sort of things.
So Bruno, any last closing remarks on that one?
No, that was good. No, totally agree.
Very good.
Yeah. Look, I mean, this is just an observation. I normally see that people try guilt the tenants, and tenants don't know what to do by saying things like, "But we need the money," or "How are we going to pay the bond?" or that sort of thing. And it does create a lot of confusion. And to Nick's point, the account is supposed to be taken control over by the executor. In an ideal world, the executor gets appointed almost immediately. The accounts are supposed to be frozen. And at that point in time, the executor deals with the money. In theory, same thing, like a foreclosing on the property. That isn't a thing, because upon being notified of a person's death, the banks wait for the appointment of an executor. So anyone complaining that they need the cash flow, the problem is you don't know if they need the cash flow. And if they utilize that money, it could become a problem. And you didn't then technically pay the right person. So there's an argument to say that you failed to comply with the lease agreement because you went ahead and paid somebody else who you thought and who had no authority. And it's a gray area, but I would rather not get to that point where that's a thing.
Absolutely. So thank you very much.